who are you?
I'm Ian MacKaye.
Ian MacKaye, thank you for joining the Nardwuar to Human Serviette radio show. I think actually for our fourth interview, although third official interview.
Okay.
Do you remember any of the other encounters that we had at all, Ian?
Well, of course. I mean, I think the first time we met, I don't know if it was this show you put on for us at the hockey rink in Vancouver. That might have been the first time I met you. Although I might have met you. What year was that? Was that 90?
That was 1991, and that's where you first met me.
Okay, yeah. So then, is that before the IPU, International Pop Underground in Olympia?
Yep, just before it.
Right, so you came down for that as well. So I met you at that show. What was the name of that was it West Van Hockey Arena?
It was at the North Van Rec Center. And it was
North
called,
Van, that's it.
And it was called Moody Vo Moo Moo. I actually didn't make it down to the pop explosion, the pop underground thing, because I was still recovering from the gig. And I guess in one of our last interviews, we discussed that gig, and I played you some footage from that gig.
Yeah. And then I guess over the years, we would run into each other, mostly in Olympia, I guess. And then I saw you again in Vancouver in the early 2000s.
Yes, I saw you again at Yo-Yo A Go-Go 1997, and my friend Scott took a picture of me and you and Cynthia talking. I tried to get you to do a station ID.
Yes, I remember that. I mean, I think that over the years, you and I have, I think we know each other. I would say that we're friendly with each other. Friendly acquaintances? Can we go that far?
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, what do you remember of those other acquaintances? Because you kind of had said in past there were like more interviews and conversations. You were kind of more into conversations and interviews.
I think that you are probably, I think of you as somebody who has an enormous amount of interest and information in your mind, in your brain. And when I have conversations with you that are off the record, you have a certain kind of, the way you speak is very measured. And then when the camera comes on or the microphone comes on, then you become a little more animated. And then also there's a certain kind of aggressiveness to your interview style, which I think plays its comedic effect to some degree. But it's also sort of like if I'm being interviewed by somebody and suddenly they just start yelling at me about very like obscure arcana, about my life, I think, all right, it feels almost like an assault, but I don't know. It's okay. I'm used to you.
But we both love Uncle Faith's pizza. You love that picture from the space camp the last time that we talked together. The Uncle Faith.
Did we talk about at your interview? Did we talk about that experience?
We just took a photo, but we didn't actually talk about the experience of the actual pizza. You were on the cover? No. Joke.
Right. Well, here's what happened. I came up to do this talk, right, at where was the Spaceland thing in Vancouver. What was the event?
It was at the Chapel Arts, and it was called Space Camp. It was kind of like a gathering of people, like how to do an interview.
Right.
Like that. You talk a whole bunch of great stuff.
Right. So I remember. So after I did the talk, I went upstairs to have. They'd gotten some food, like a pizza, and I said, I'm a longtime vegan, 30 some years now, 33 years or something, and so I said, please get me a pizza with no cheese on it. So a pizza was duly delivered upstairs, and I looked at it, and my impression was that somebody had carefully drawn a picture of me on the pizza box. And it just, in my mind, I thought that was supposed to be me. And I thought someone did a drawing on the pizza box of me, but then it turned out it wasn't a drawing of me. It was of Uncle Fady. Is that how you pronounce it?
I'm not sure, but we have an amazing photo of like me, you, and a pizza box together.
Right. I brought one of those pizza boxes home because it was such a weird, my brain just shifted. I thought in my mind that somebody had done a drawing of me, a really incredible drawing. And then I realized, that's just part of the art. And then I thought, why is my picture on this pizza box? I was so puzzled. And then someone says, it's not you. And once they said it, it was clearly not me. But there was just that moment. There was a moment in which I thought my brain just had locked in that was supposed to be me, but it wasn't me. I don't know.
How have you been affected, especially your new band at Discord, by this coronavirus? Because you were going to release a record. How has Discord been affected? You had mentioned to me a whole bunch of distributors, mail order, etc. How has it affected you?
Me or the label or the band?
The label. Just getting a record out. You know, a new band. Yeah. How is it getting out?
Well, it just so happened the timing of the record. I mean, this is a record we recorded a while ago, and we just are very slow moving. I mean, Joe and Amy and I have been playing together for 5 years in the basement. You know, it's 5 solid years. We just played in the basement. It took us 4 years to do a show, and then another, year and a half to actually get out and get this record done. We were in no hurry, so it's not that big of a deal. It just so happened that the release date was March 27th. On the 10th or 11th of March, things started getting a little bit like you started to get a sense that the virus was coming, and there was sort of rumblings. And I actually had a recording session with another band on the 12th and 13th and 14th. And those are the days that it just suddenly went crazy down here, like all the food hoarding and everyone was freaking out. I was in the studio the whole time, so I was fine. And then Sunday, the 15th, I was just puzzling over, the situation. And I got to thinking, well, if this is happening, then all the shipping lanes are going to get really jammed up. So if we're releasing a record, if it's supposed to be released on the 27th of March, we would stagger our release dates. I mean, we would shut our shipping to the different stores. So we ship to distributors and we ship to stores. So obviously distributors get the records first because they need time to turn it around, show to the stores. Then we would ship to West Coast stores. We're in Washington, D.C. Then Mountain Time, Central Time, East Coast. The idea that all the stores get the records roughly the same time. So then they all put it out on the agreed upon date, which was March 27th. So that was the week, what we call ship week. So typically we would ship distributors on a Monday, and then kind of each day we'd ship out things. And then on the beginning of the next week, we would ship out mail order. So I got in my mind that all the shipping lanes are going to get jammed with medical stuff. And I thought we better get this record out now and ship it to everybody now, get it to them now before everything gets clogged. So the next day we started to figure out how we could ship everything on the Tuesday. But then that night, it suddenly occurred to me, if we ship these records, they're going to arrive at distributors and stores that are closed. So that morning I got up at 5 a.m. I thought, uh-oh. So I wrote to Brian, who works with me here at Discord, and I said, call me when you wake up. So he did, and I said, we got to pull the plug, because we knew at that point San Francisco was shutting down, and our main distributor there, Revolver, they were going to be out of business. So though we could have continued to ship to our stores, it wouldn't have been fair to our distributors, right? So we didn't ship to the stores. With that in mind, we could have shipped our mail order out, but that wouldn't have been fair to the stores or the distributor. So we decided not to do that. And with that in mind, we could have posted it digitally, but we don't think that's fair to anybody. Since we didn't have any tours or shows planned around it, it's not that big of a deal, like in terms of there's no time frame really for us. The biggest concern for me at the moment is that people pre-ordered the record. A lot of them. I mean, right now here at Discord House, I have literally thousands of records packed up, ready to go, just waiting to be shipped. But I think that it's the right thing to do in terms of the supporting independent stores and distributors. And I hope that people have a sense of patience as we figure out what next to do. We're just, it's a calamity, right? This is a worldwide calamity. This is just a stupid record we're talking about, not the end of the world.
And that is
So-
a new band that you have, Koriki, your brand new band. Soap and Water will never get rid of.
The spot, my friend.
That spot. Very
Yeah.
topical. Soap and Water. Koriki.
Yeah, strange. Yeah, strange. Do you know the
And-
reference, Do you know the reference?
Well, what is interesting is my mom, who has a Russian background, would always say, "You aren't eating the crust." And she is Russian, and she would call the crust of the pizza a korочки. You would never have the korочки. So when I hear koriki, I think of korочки, and I think of crust.
Good. You think of your mom, too. That's nice. But do you know the reference to the spot?
No, I don't, actually. I just think of crust.
When I say soap and water will never get rid of that spot, do you know the spot? Do you understand that reference at all?
Well, I kind of am more partial to your song, Have a Cup of Tea, because I can relate to that. You have like the reference for Have a Cup of Tea.
Have you heard
my-
that song?
I saw a listing of it, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought, what is your favorite tea? I love ginger peach tea. I
you
love
a-
ginger peach.
Are you evading my question right now?
Exactly, what is the spot? No, well, I was thinking, like, I don't know the answer. You probably know the
Okay.
answer.
All right. I was just curious. Yeah, cup of tea is good. That's a nice song. I like black tea. I like green tea and black tea. That's my pretty straight. That's where I'm at. Just a simple tea. I'm having some green tea here right now.
And thank you very much again for joining me, Nardwuar and Ian MacKaye, via Skype. From the Discord office. Is this your office, your Discord office?
This is the office. The same one as. Hold on.
It is indeed. And here is Ian MacKaye at the Discord off. Ah, exactly.
The same one. And then this is 2000. And now I'm sitting here in 2020.
With me, Nardwuar and Ian MacKaye. And you're sitting on a chair or a stool, because in the evens, a lot of times you sat on a stool. Are there any more stools in Koriki?
No, I'm standing up in that band.
Where are all the stools? Did you ever sit on the stool you're sitting on right now?
Well, this isn't a stool. This is an office chair that's high, a higher office chair. But no, I didn't use this chair. I used a drum stool. That's all. Simple.
And Ian,
And when I was playing the evens, yeah.
And Ian, you're speaking to me, Nardwuar and Ian MacKaye, doing an interview live from the Discord house. But you yourself have a collection of interviews, like from Mark Anderson. Can people hear those? What's the deal behind those?
When Mark and Mark Jenkins did a book called Dance of Days, which is sort of it's a history of the DC punk scene. I actually haven't read the book because I'm such a central figure in it, and it just seemed uncomfortable to me to read about myself. So I typically don't read books that are about me or involve me as a character. But Mark Anderson's a very good friend of mine, and I knew that he had been interviewing people tirelessly for, well over a decade. So at some point we were talking. This is maybe 2002, 2003, somewhere around there. And I asked Mark, where are all those cassettes? And he said, oh, they're in a milk crate in my basement. And I thought, oh, well, shit, you should let me have those and I'll digitize them all. So this is back when I could just, my process of digitizing was just making CDs. And I was really, it was so, I worked for probably 400 interviews. I don't know. It's a lot of interviews. I probably have 400 hours of interviews with people. People can't hear them because they were done specifically for Mark and the book, and they're not public. They're not for public consumption. But they will end up at some point, I'm sure, as part of the DC Punk archive at the public library, though I think they'll probably be under seal for a little while because a lot of those people are still alive, and there's a lot of really personal information in there. I don't think they had not intended for people to hear.
It's incredible that you catalog everything, a real database. Ian, you seem to have like an incredible archive at Discord of everything. In fact, you even have like a Nardwuar letter that I wrote you. What's going on there with your archive?
Well, over the years, I didn't really throw away my incoming letters. I have 35 years of punk correspondence, and for the last 5 or 6 years, I've been working with an archivist named Nicole Prokopenko, and we've been creating this pretty incredible collection. So this is one of the boxes. I have dozens of these kind of boxes. This is Fugazi number 3. So I have it broken into a various smaller, like there's Fugazi, Minor Threat, Discord, and Ian. So I can search by your name, and then I came across a couple things in this one box, which is box. Hold on, let me see if I can find it here.
How many boxes are there? Like, does it fill a complete basement at the Discord house?
Not a basement. It's in the archive room upstairs.
And it's amazing that you kept all those correspondence that people sent you. What was your process in doing that? Like, someone would send a letter and you would put it on a shelf, or were you thinking from the very beginning, I was going to store this away archivally?
The process was from the very beginnings. I would answer mail, and if I found the letter interesting, I would throw it in a box under my desk. When the box got full, I would close it up and put it upstairs and behind. I have like a kind of a crawl space behind the wall, and then I put another box under the desk, and then over and over and over and over. And then probably, as I said, in around 2015 or so, Nicole came over and I showed her the stuff, and she said, okay. So we just started pulling boxes out, and I sat with her and went through every letter with her. So this is folder number 13. I don't know what. So you can see there's a few letters in there. Let's see what you have to say. I don't know.
Nardwuar the Human Serviette to Ian MacKaye.
Right. So this is undated, I'm afraid. Here's your letter. It says, Ian Fugazi, exclamation point. It's Nardwuar the Human Serviette here from Vancouver, BC, Canada, saying, enclosed is a compilation LP for you. In fact, it's vinyl, CD, and 24-page booklet all in the same package. Yup, when you buy the vinyl LP, bonus CD is included, and it retails for under $10. I hope a lot you like it. Arrow, Ian, if Fugazi comes to Vancouver again, I'd love to organize another all-ages gig. The university now has a 1,500 capacity hall available for rent, and I think I could get it. I'd like to organize another gig. I love to organize another gig. Sorry for bugging you, but I'm bored. Keep on rocking in the free world, Nardwuar.
But that's amazing that you kept that. Thank you, Ian.
I also have the record still.
You did? Wow! In that same box?
I have the record. The record's in my record collection at home.
Is there anything missing that you want from the archive? Like you said, you have a whole bunch of posters, etc., records. Is there anything that's kind of like the holy grail that you really want to get a hold of, that you know that is out there, but it's hard to get a hold of?
I'm not a collector, so I'm not looking to complete a collection. I'm an archivist, so what I deal with is the stuff that I have, or that is in the collection. If people want to send me stuff, I'm happy to add it to the collection, but I'm not particularly looking for anything. There's one item that I had in my possession that has gone missing, that has driven me a little bonkers, which is in 1980, the Teen Idols went to Los Angeles on a Greyhound bus. We played one show at Hong Kong Cafe. Then we took a bus to San Francisco, and we played one show at Mabuhay Gardens. This was 1980. It was the 4 members of the Teen Idols with 2 roadies, one of which was Henry Rollins. The other was Mark Sullivan. We spent, $3,000 between the 6 of us, or something like that. The tour grossed $26. It was a disaster in terms of, we certainly lost a lot of money. Nobody knew who we were. It was actually the first show the Teen Idols ever played outside of Washington, D.C., and we took a Greyhound bus for 3 days with just our guitars and a pair of drumsticks to do it. While we were in L.A., we were huge fans of Black Flag, of course, and the Germs. And so we were looking everywhere trying to find Darby. we want to meet Darby Crash. And we looked for him in LA, and we looked for him we asked around San Francisco. Nobody knew where he was. A couple weeks after we got home, a friend of mine sent me a flyer from San Francisco. And it was a flyer for a big festival, a punk festival. But on the back, Darby wrote a message to us saying, "Hey, Teen Waddles, sorry I missed you." And it says, "Mohicans rule," because Henry at the time had a very low mohawk, like not a big pointy one, but a little low mohawk. And he wrote, "Mohicans rule," and it said Darby. And that was on my wall for years. But with the inscription on the back of the flyer, I had the flyer showing. Can't find that flyer. That's driving me a little crazy. And I've searched high and low for it.
Is it easy to find the Halifax hotel receipt? I asked you about a Halifax hotel receipt. This is some of the incredible stuff in your archive. Not many bands would keep their hotel receipt. What? Just a bit close. That's amazing. Could you explain what people are seeing right there? It's the Lakewood Hotel?
Lake Lawn. So this is the Lake Lawn Motel in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. The date is what? July 26, 1998. We played a show in Halifax, a great show. We did a really nice tour. We played in Fredericton, and we came across from Quebec City, and we came across and we ended up in Halifax. And then our next show was going to be in Portland, Maine. So we decided to take the ferry across from the bottom of Nova Scotia. And so we played the show in Halifax, and the next day we hung out and had a really nice time with the people there. And I think we hung out on these rocks on the east coast of on the ocean there, just really beautiful. And then they headed back up to Halifax, and we headed south down towards Yarmouth, which is the ferry port. We got the catamaran ferry, as I recall, and the fast ferry. So we got there in the evening. We thought we'd have night off, so we'll just get a nice hotel. And this was just a really simple, old school hotel, and it was really memorable. I mean, I've stayed in a lot of hotels and motels over the years, but that one was just sweet, and the people were very nice, and it was just a pleasant evening. And I thought I have somewhere a photo of it, or maybe a postcard, but I couldn't find that for you at the moment. I looked. Let me see. Maybe there's something on the. No, it just says thank you on the back. But I kept it because it was just a real kind of old school hotel, as opposed to most of them, which are just basically credit card receipts, And the price was $169. I think it was 3 rooms, maybe, if I remember correctly. Yes.
Fugazi basically only traveled with 2 vans. How did you keep the receipt not from crumbling or getting crumpled up? Like, how do you keep it mint? It's incredible that you have the receipt, this random receipt. How did you store all the stuff in the van? I was just curious.
I had a backpack. In my backpack, I kept a manila envelope and kept all my paperwork in there. I had folders. I walked around with those things. So I still keep receipts and stuff. I mean, it's just my nature. I was the one who dealt with the money and the paperwork. So Fugazi, I have an enormous amount of documentation from that band. I mean, sadly, Minor Threat, I have some documentation, but boy, I wish I had kept more. And I think probably, the Teen Idols, there was just a little bit. Minor Threat, there was quite a bit more. Embrace never toured, so it didn't matter. But I think that my experience of wishing that I had more really compelled me to document Fugazi's experiences, or the Fugazi, just, the time we were touring. I just wanted to keep track of it. In fact, when Fugazi first started playing in 1987, I've always kept journals, or I had kept journals at the time, and I started a separate Fugazi journal. Like, I had my own journal, but then I kept another book with just a Fugazi journal. And every night we played a show, I would have an entry about the show, talking about what I remembered, who was there, just anything, any experience whatsoever. And I kept it. I kept a solid record of the band until I think it was June of '88, so almost a year's worth. And we'd done quite a few shows at that point. And I went down to see the Rollins Band at the 930 Club here in D.C., and someone broke into my car and stole my backpack at that show. And in my backpack was that journal. And it was completely useless to anybody. I mean, there was nothing in the backpack except a couple of journals and a VHS compilation tape that Tim Kerr from the Big Boys lent me. And I spent, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours pulling up manhole covers and looking in sewers, going to the trash all around the downtown looking for it. Never found it. It's a shame. So,
that's terrible.
That's life.
Did you document playing 242 Main in Burlington?
I mean, we played. Of course, I have the record of who we played with. I mean, it's on the website. It's all there. The stuff that I have, generally speaking, and I have, I would have probably the settlement sheet. Probably, I don't know. You have to see. And there's a couple of photos, not a lot of photos, but I remember the room really well. And I had, of course, no idea. Maybe at the time I was aware of the fact that the mayor's wife was involved with the building, but the mayor was Mayor Sanders. So there's mayors everywhere. Who cares, But it was a cool spot. I remember thinking that 242 Main was really, it's very European. When you tour in Europe, you play a lot of social centers, which are, basically venues that are not commercial venues, or kind of state-sponsored, government-sponsored, and a little more freewheeling. So that was very European. 242 Main was one of the first ones here. Another one would be Gilman Street. That was another example of some sort of a not really a commercial venue, but kind of, out more connected to the scene or the actual community.
Minor Threat's last show was actually at an abandoned department store?
Yeah. Yes.
That's an interesting venue, isn't it?
Yeah, it was called the Landsberg Cultural Center. It was basically a vacant department store. It had been vacant for many, many years. And these fellows who were putting on shows, I think they started to do events there. It's just a big hall. What was funny about that show is that we were playing, the show was Minor Threat, Big Boys, and this band Trouble Funk, who are a go-go band. And go-go is a sort of, in many ways, sort of a dominant music scene here in Washington in the black community.
And right behind you, Ian, you have some go-go 45s. I noticed if you turn to your right, it says go-go. There is actually
CDs. Those are CDs. Yeah, I've been a long time go-go fan, and I have many, 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 many go-go records, CDs, and tapes. But so Trouble Funk was one of the earliest go-go bands, and a band that we really, really loved. And I knew there was guys who had put on some punk shows, and one of the guys was a go-go promoter. So we did a partnership, like a punk go-go show. And it was really Trouble Funk's show in many ways. It was their PA and their production. They put the show together. When we got to the Landsberg, we were startled to discover that there was no stage, because go-go bands don't use a stage, because it's not about the band, it's about the dancing. So for Minor Threat, especially at that point, we knew well over 1,000 people were going to show up. Stage was pretty important. I think we cobbled together a stage out of a bunch of folding tables. It was really dicey. And in fact, Trouble Funk set up on the floor and wouldn't move their stuff. So we set up the folding tables in front of their gear. And then the crowd surge was pushing the entire stage backwards into their gear. And the Trouble Funk guys were just freaking out. But it all ended fine. And it was our last show, as it turned out.
What department was it in? It was in a department store. Like, was it in like housewares or sporting goods? Do you know, like, what was the area that it was in?
It was more of the main hall. So when you go into a department store, there might be there's a mezzanine quite often, like a hall, like you could see like a balcony, and there's like the main hall where maybe all of those departments you're talking about may have existed, but there was nothing there. There's no remnant of the department store. It was just a big empty room with a kind of as I recall, a bit of a balcony around it. But I'm not even sure if my memory serves me correct, but it was just a big empty hall. Nothing in it.
And right now, we're going to call Roger Allen because he has a couple questions. Are you still okay for time, Ian?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to call Roger right now. I'm going to add him to conversation. And we have Roger Allen on the screen. Hello, Roger.
Hello.
Thank you, Ian, for answering all Roger's questions. You've had quite a few questions, haven't you, Roger?
I have. I've had, but it's only because I'm interested. But yeah, I've had a lot of questions sporadically throughout the years. I never thought I would come face to face with the man I asked him to, but here I am. So it's
virtual face to face.
That's true. Yeah.
And Ian, believe it or not, Roger has been on the Nardwuar Human Serviette radio show like 53 times. 53 times.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's true. I've been on Nardwuar'S show over 53 times, speaking just about my experiences with music and why I guess I feel they're important to me.
You're long suffering. Oh, by the way,
boom.
Nardwuar. Do you remember I was telling you about the Teen Idols show at the Hong Kong?
Yes.
I was telling you the Los Angeles. This is a ticket. It's been spelled Teen Idols wrong.
And Dirksen didn't like your photo, did he? He didn't like the photo.
Right. Well, that's Mabuhay Gardens. That's a different show. But yes, that's also true.
And people can actually refer to that interview because I asked you about playing with the mentors, I think in our first interview in 2001. So people can go back to that. And you had mentioned how Al Duce carried an SVT cabinet all on his own. So people can explore more about that's amazing that you have that. And Roger, you were saying the Plaza of Nations gig. That's really important to you, isn't it?
Yeah, well, once again, I'll just say, Ian, I'm so used to hearing your voices on records. It's throughout my life. It's really cool to actually hear you, to speak with you directly. And thanks for taking the time.
Sure.
I'm holding up here the ticket to the Plaza of Nations show from 1993, which I actually sent to you maybe 15 years ago as you were documenting all the Fugazi live shows, and now this resides actually on the Discord website.
Yes.
I just saw this recently on there, and I thought, that's pretty cool. It's basically rubble now, but Vancouver's Plaza of Nations was built for the World's Fair Expo 86, and during Expo, in the plaza, there was a place where you could make a musical recording called Studio 86. People could bring in a recording of their own music and then sing to it in a professional studio for $11.95, and they would receive a mixed cassette of their song. It made me think if there were any sort of punk or hardcore bands in Vancouver that took advantage of that. And I was wondering, have you ever been in a situation where somebody tried to sell you a copy of the show that you just played?
The only time that something like that at all, Fugazi played a show in San Francisco. And I'll have to think of the name of the venue, but it was a later show. And I didn't really know the promoter very well. The people we'd done shows with in the past had stopped doing gigs. And this person, they did a 5-camera video shoot of us without asking us. They had kind of fixed cameras already set. So then after we were home, he contacted me and he said, I have this video of this show. And I said, that's nice. And, and he said, would you like a copy? And I said, yeah. And then I think he tried to charge me for it. So I told him to go fuck himself. That's ridiculous. And then he wanted to sell it. He wanted to do a deal with us to just sell it. And I was just not going to happen. It's just not, it was ridiculous. It was just it was very strange. Very occasionally, I think over the years, now that you mentioned it, there have been people who have recorded our show and then later on offered not necessarily to sell me a copy, but they wanted to sell it.
Right.
And then they were offering me, like they wanted if I wanted to be a partner in that. And then I'd say, well, give me a copy of it so I can see it. And they wouldn't give me a copy, which meant they didn't trust me, which confirmed my fact of not trusting them either.
When Roger has come to my show doing a hardcore show, oftentimes he brings records. One of the records that he actually bought was a Buff Hall 45, and I think you have it there. What is the deal behind that? Because you told Roger that was a legitimate bootleg. a legitimate bootleg.
Right. There was a German label called Lost and Found, who are still in some form or other, they're still seem to be active. At some point, they contacted us about, they wanted to do this bootleg of that particular show. And I think maybe they'd already started doing, I forgot. It was sort of like the horse is already out of the stable at that point. And so they told us they'd do 1,000, I think, and they sent us 100 copies. And that was sort of like a tacit payment. Like we agreed to it because we accepted the 100 copies. We never even sold them. We just gave them away to people. They didn't stop making them, though, or someone didn't stop making them. They continued to make them over the years. That show was interesting, the Buff Hall show. That was a show Minor Threat played in Camden, New Jersey in 1982. And before the show, I was standing out front with a bunch of kids. There were kids skateboarding. It was a very tough neighborhood, Camden. It's just across the river from Philadelphia. And there was a bunch of kids, like a punk show. Kids were all hanging out front. And this SSD Control from Boston pulled up in a van. And I walked out to meet them. Al Barile, the guitar player, was driving the van. It was a brand new van, and the band was in there, and all these like Boston crew guys, like and friends of theirs were all hanging out, and there was probably 10 people in that van. And I walked out to talk to Al. I was standing by the front door. He had his window down, and it was a two-way street, and I heard a car engine kind of racing, and I looked to my left, and I saw a car about a block and a half away, and it was coming pretty fast towards us. So I yelled at the kids who were skateboarding in the street and said, "Watch out, this guy's coming really fast." So they ran out of the way, and I pressed myself up against the side of the van as close as I could to give this guy as wide a berth to get around me, because there was plenty of room. It was a two-way street. Right before he got to us, he centered his car, and he hit the van head on. And I was standing right there. I don't remember anything except for an enormous concussion and then an orange light going in a circle. And then I woke up, I don't know how much longer, maybe, I don't know, a few minutes, I don't know. I was knocked out. I was probably 10 to 15 feet behind the van. My left shoe was 40 feet down the street. The guys, people had stopped the car who had hit us. But then they heard that I had been hit, and people ran back up, and then he drove off. The van was totaled. The people in the van were all messed up. They didn't have seatbelts, so they hit their foreheads against the windshield. And some kid said to me, "How did you know what to do?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Right when the car hit, you grabbed the roof of the van and you jumped straight up in the air, so the front of the car went underneath you, and I guess my foot hit the windshield, and I flipped over the top of the car." I went to the hospital. They said that they put some methylate on. I had a huge contusion in the back of my head where I landed on my head. It was bleeding, and they cleaned that up. And I broke a toe maybe, and I had one of my calves was messed up. But they said there was nothing else really to do. So we went back, and then I did the gig. I played the show. And that's the recording.
At the actual hospital, you spent like $60. And I was thinking, how many, in dollar terms, medical bills did you spend in Minor Threat? How much medical bills were spent? How much time in hospital total? Because there was a story that you told in one of our earlier interviews, I think a 2012 interview, about you playing Calgary and wanting to play Vancouver with the Dead Kennedys, but some of the band members got sick, but you didn't want to bring them to the hospital. So I was curious, what did the hospital bill total for a Minor Threat tap at?
I think the only other time we ever had to deal with a hospital ever was in Winnipeg, actually. We'd done a show in Winnipeg. As a matter of fact, here's the flyer for that show, Nardwuar.
Amazing. Let's take a close look at that. Who's on the gig right there? Who's on the gig? The Personality Crisis.
Personality Crisis and Stretch Marks at the Monterey Pavilion.
And
That's
that
really cool.
looks like a mint poster. Is that the actual poster? Because it's mint. How did you keep that so flat? How did you keep that so flat?
That's true.
I don't remember. It was 1983. It's been a few years. But that show, we played in Winnipeg. We had a good show. But then Brian and Jeff and I forgot, maybe one other person had been not feeling, maybe Rich Moore, our roadie, were not feeling well. And they wanted to go to the hospital when we got back to where we were staying. I think we were staying with a guy named Matt, maybe. But we got back to the house and they really wanted to go to the hospital. And I was totally against it because hospitals in America are extremely expensive. And the idea of going to an emergency room seemed insane for a sore throat. And we got into a pretty serious argument. And then they mutinied. They took the van. They all went off to the hospital. And they came back a couple hours later. And they were saying, we have tonsillitis. I hope you're happy. But I mean, tonsillitis means sore throat. That's all it means. The bill was only about $17.
Thank you, Canada. Thank you,
exactly.
Canada.
But it didn't stop us from having the drive from Winnipeg to Calgary was like a 4-hour screaming match about, me trying to stop them from going to the hospital and, me being angry at them for, just went on and on. Then we got to Calgary. We did the show. We had to show the Dead Kennedys the next night in Vancouver. The Calgary show, we played a place called 10 Foot Henry's, and it was a late night. And if we were going to get to Vancouver, we'd have to leave pretty much right after the gig. Also, it had been snowing in the mountains. And it's about a 12-hour drive, maybe 14. How far is that drive?
It's about 12 hours.
And I think that the esprit de corps was rather low. And it was decided that it was just too insane for us to try to make this drive with people sick in the snow. Also, the other thing about it was a last-minute addition, this show, and it would have kicked us all the way back to the West Coast, and we'd have to make our way all the way back to, I think our next show is in Minneapolis or something. So it just, too bad. I really wish we could have done that show. It would have been great to play Vancouver, but Brian was very sick, and it just didn't seem like it was a good idea. So that's the way it goes. But yeah, Canadian healthcare was cheap, and they rubbed that in my face, by the way.
Also, speaking of skateboarding, etc., did JFA really challenge Minor Threat to a skate-off?
Yes, it was ridiculous. I think that they were Brian, the singer is Brian, I think. Those guys were real skateboarders. I mean, that's what they did. Minor Threat we were a punk band, and some of us skated. But I think that maybe somebody in the band, maybe it was a joke, or maybe they just felt somehow aggrieved that people referred to Minor Threat as a skate punk band when they felt like they were the skate punk band. But really, it's a crown that they were welcome to have. I didn't have any sense of there was no competition. I was the only person in Minor Threat that really did time skateboarding. I mean, Henry and I in 1978. And no, I don't have the bus receipt. I wish I did. The bus ticket, I might have it somewhere, but I couldn't find it. I looked for it. But Henry and I took a bus together. I was 16 and he was 17 in 1978. And we took a bus together to California to go skateboarding and back. That's a lot of bus drive to go skating. So we took it very seriously, skateboarding. And then when punk came along, for me, late 78 and early 79, punk and skateboarding were kind of opposites. Like the people I knew who were punks thought skateboarding was ridiculous. And the people I knew who were skateboarders thought punks were just a bunch of pompous idiots. They didn't like punks at all. So when I got into punk, I kind of just stopped with the skateboarding stuff in terms of going to parks. I found the skateboard jock mentality not that appealing anyway. I didn't care for that. So the punk thing was much more where I was at. Then in 1979, late 79 to 80, that's when suddenly Steve Olson and Dwayne Peters and Tony Alva and all these people, they started, showing up punk. And it was pretty incredible to see those two worlds kind of fuse. But when I first got into punk, skateboarding and punk were opposite. Of course, when I first got into punk, college and punk was opposite too. Like people who, you didn't go to college if you were a punk, and if you were in college, you didn't like punk. So
what happened with the skate off? Like JFA versus Minor Threat. What happened? Like, did you do tricks?
There was no skate off. They just said they'd challenge it, but it was ridiculous. As I said, it's ridiculous. We never even. I don't think we ever. I've never even seen those guys skate. I don't know anything about them. I mean, I know them. We played a couple of shows with them. I like their band, but I think that was more of a. I don't know. They're just popping off. I don't know why. They can again. They can have the title. I don't care.
Because, Roger, you were saying when you talked to Tim Kerr, JFA challenged the big boys to a skate off, too?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, that's sort of where they were at, you know. And they were the first band, I think, to have skateboarding on the cover. There's a picture of Michael, the bass player, doing on a half pipe. Yeah. It's a really beautiful photo. Great photo. Yeah, and I was just talking to Glenn Friedman about this the other day. I was just discussing this very thing, about bands that were skaters, and that was one of the first one. I think Code of Honor has a skateboard on their cover too.
Yeah.
There's a few others. Yeah, Aggression. That's right. Yep. Yeah.
And Nardwuar. Nardwuar. Well, I'd like to think, but not really, because Nardwuar was like 83.
But, speaking of skateboarding, in the 90s, Fugazi played at Vancouver's, again, Plaza of Nation, and the plaza was built for Expo 86. And during Expo, there was a world's skateboard contest. I believe it was the first one. And one of the events was at Vancouver's Sealand Bowls, which is the oldest skate park in Canada. Uh-huh. And of course, Thrasher Skateboard magazine was represented at that contest. Mm-hmm. And for me as a kid, Thrasher really was a vehicle into learning about, of course, skateboarding, graphics, and music. Mm-hmm. And for me, music and skateboarding were inseparable. Right. And Pusshead, who had a column in Thrasher, he created some incredible artwork. He started his own label, and he was in a very intense band. Mm-hmm. Did Pusshead, was there any ever collaborations thought of maybe with Pusshead and Discord?
Not particularly. I mean, he did do, Septic Death did a cover of, I think it was Out of Step. It's on a Japanese sampler. Do you have that?
I know the one. I don't have it.
But we first met Pusshead in 1982. Minor Threat was on tour. We went to Reno, and he came down, and we all skated together. We had a great time with him. Nice guy. At some point, he did send us some art. He thought maybe we might want to use some of his art for record covers. But, I mean, Jeff Nelson is our graphic guy, and pretty strong graphics, like Jeff Nelson. Yeah, for sure. So and we had our own aesthetic, but we appreciated Pusshead's interest in what we were doing. And as I said, he was really active guy. He's he was in Idaho. He's a kid from Idaho, and he was really making something happen.
And in Vancouver, BC, Roger, you mentioned the local scene. Skull Skates, Kevin Harris. Amazing. He had one of his own boards, didn't he?
Yeah. In board graphics, again, were really awesome during the 80s. And in Vancouver, we had the skateboarder Kevin Harris, who was sponsored by Powell Peralta. Mm-hmm. And he had a VCJ graphic, which was one of the iconic graphics that Powell put out. It was a Mountie holding the skeleton of a beaver. Okay. He also opened up a Richmond skate ranch. I have a newer one of his boards here put out by Canada's Skull Skates. Uh-huh. And he was a real inspiration because he created a scene, because he created a place where we could go skateboard way back in like the 80s. And I was just curious, were there any skateboarders that were sort of inspiring to you, like from Washington in that area back then, or even maybe now?
Washington, D.C. skaters?
Yeah, somebody in your area.
Well, when we first got into skateboarding, we kind of didn't know any other skateboarders. I mean, we were all riding bikes because we'd seen this movie called On Any Sunday, which is about motorcycles. A lot of guys jumping, doing like dirt bike stuff. So we made our bikes into proto BMX bikes before BMX even. We were just riding and doing jumps and making little tracks and berms and stuff like that. We enjoyed that, but then in about 1975, I guess, the urethane wheel started kind of getting around, and we bought, there was a board you could buy at a toy shop called a Rolling Star it was a loose ball bearing, but it was a urethane wheel and really fun. We just started riding, and skateboarding made a lot more sense for a city kid than dirt bike riding. So then we started getting more and more serious with skating, as me and this friend of mine, John Hargadon. And then at some point, we found out about this place out in Bethesda, Maryland, which is just north of Washington, called the Sunshine House. It was the surf shop. It was basically a place that sold surfboards and surfing clothes and shorts and stuff, but also had skateboards. So we started going there, which was exciting. That's when we first came across Skateboarder magazine. And
did the Sunshine House want to sponsor you?
Not till later, much later. But then we were skating, we were building a ramp, and that's, Rollins, who at the time was Henry Garfield, he lived just down the street from us, and we'd been sort of on bad terms with him through other stuff. But he came by on a skateboard, and we saw him, and then he came back, he said, "Can I ride your ramp?" And then we just became, that's when Henry and I really locked down. I met Henry when I was 11, and he was 12. But I think really that skateboarding experience was really where we became best of friends. So there was a bunch of us in Glover Park, which is our neighborhood. They're all skateboarding. And then we met these other kids from Chevy Chase and Friendship Heights, which are other neighborhoods. And those guys, we formed a team called Team Sahara. And it was just a self-designated team. We bought jerseys that were just black and gold mesh jerseys, nothing written on them, we just wanted an identifying mark. Mostly, we just wanted to be a street gang, essentially. We started going to contests. Henry was a pretty good freestyler. I was never a good skater. I was an okay skater. But John Hargadon and a few other people were pretty decent. And we would go do contests and freak out the other teams because we were unsponsored. But we were very good friends with the Sunshine House people. And eventually, they actually offered to let us, give us a discount on stuff and so forth. And so we made a new shirt that has FNR, which is Finnegan and Roberts, which is the name of the people that own the shop. So it's the Team Sahara logo with an FNR above it. But on that note, let me get something. Hold on a second.
And we're speaking here to Ian MacKaye with special guest Roger Allen. Hello, Roger.
Hello, Nardwuar.
We are speaking. Who are we speaking right now to?
We're speaking with Ian MacKaye, who is just returning with something that he wants to show us.
So one of the last things that, so those guys, they gave us discounts, but at some point they actually made boards. They made skateboards, and we got free boards from them. And this is one of the boards. This actually, you can see, has egg hunt stickers slathered on this side. Behind here, you can see the top of the Anarchy A that Biscuit from the Big Boys painted on the bottom of the board. But on the other side that's the Meyer Threat board.
Yeah, cool. I've seen that board somewhere. That's
right.
Cool.
That's the board. But this is my skateboard for years and years.
Where did you bring that board? Like, was there an abandoned police station? Was it Stalag 19 or Cell Block 19?
Cell Block 19. Cell Block 19.
The idea behind that abandoned police station as a place for ramps, to do skateboarding. That's amazing. Could you say anything about that?
In Georgetown, in this neighborhood, Georgetown, on Volta Place, there was a substation. It was a small precinct, but they had shut it down. And it was just an empty parking lot. So we just procured a bunch of wood and just started building ramps down there. Nobody said anything. So we just continued to do it until one day they just knocked them all down, and they built condos there. But it was a nice little spot. I knocked myself out there. Clean out.
Roger, anything else to add to Ian MacKaye?
No, I think I've asked all I want to ask for now. I think I'll email Ian in a couple days.
All right. Cool.
I'm just joking.
All right. All right. Good to see you.
Well, thanks so much, Roger, and do. Ian, the Slicky Boys, 1976. One of my favorite bands. The guitarist of the Slicky Boys ended up producing the Bad Brains?
Yes, that's true. Kim Kane. He ended up producing the Bad Brains because Skip Groff from Yesterday and Today was too nervous to go in the studio with them. The Bad Brains were a local DC band, and they really wanted to they wanted to do a record. So they knew that yesterday and today was doing Limp Records. So they went up there to talk to Skip Groff. And they said, we want to go in the studio. And he knew he was interested in them. They were a very new band. Nobody had really seen them. But then he asked Kim, as I understand it, he asked Kim to go in the studio with them. And so Kim did. And I'm not sure. I think it's just the Black Dot session, but it might have been the first session. There's two different inner-ear sessions the Bad Brains did. They're great sessions. And I think the Black Dots, it came out much later. It's called the Black Dots on Caroline Records. But that was recorded in the summer of 1979, if I recall correctly. And I think Kim worked on that one, but he might have worked on the first one. But the Sleeky Boys, you couldn't possibly have known them in 1976. You just knew that's when they started?
I kind of liked them because they were lumped in with the garage revival, among other bands with the Fuzztones, who had links to Tina Peel. Do you remember the band Tina Peel?
Yes, but were you aware of the Sleeky Boys in 1976?
No, I was in the Cheap Trick and the Beatles at that time.
Thank you. All right. The Sleeky Boys were a enormously important local band. They're one of the first bands that we would see regularly and always dance to them. They were just great people. The original singer was Martha Hull. I never saw them with her. It was already at that point, they had already moved to Mark Noon. Mark Noon, the singer, by the way, and you'll appreciate this, is I think a distant cousin of Peter Noon of the Herman's Hermits.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. But Marshall and Kim, Emery Alexis on bass, and Dan on the drums, they were just great people and really such a great band and super supportive of us. There was a year in the early 80s where there's a local music award thing here called the Whammies, which are sort of like the Grammys. And one year, the Sleeky Boys won Best Hardcore Band, and they accepted it on behalf of all the punk bands like Minor Threat, who they said wouldn't ever even come to the to the award ceremony. They're really good people. This is a show here that this is very early. This is Minor Threat and SOA, Henry's band, playing with the Sleeky Boys. They asked us to open for them at DC Space. This is January 9th, 1981. So this would be probably our third show, maybe our fourth show. Really supportive guys. Later, we did a show with them and the Cramps. This is the summer of 1980. Sleeky Boys, Cramps, Tony Perkins and the Psychotics, and the Teen Idols.
And
this is Teen Idols.
And wasn't Calvin at that gig? Calvin Johnson was at that gig?
He was. Sorry, and I should clarify. This was the summer before. This was the Teen Idols opening for the Sleeky Boys. Yeah, I think Calvin was at that gig. Yes, he was.
Because you had met Calvin at the Sunshine House? You wanted to get a T-shirt at the Sunshine House?
He remembers that. My first recollection of Calvin was at a New Year's Eve party at Sharon Cheslow's house, New Year's Eve 1981. And there was a guy there. At that time, people were wearing bandanas around their ankle, around their boots and stuff, because it was sort of the LA punk thing. It was a style. And this guy showed up with Converse and a pink bandana tied around his ankle. And we thought, who is this guy? It was Calvin Johnson.
I mentioned him earlier, Tina Peel. What do you remember about the band Tina Peel featuring Deb and Rudy from the Fuzztones? What do you remember about Tina Peel?
I never saw them, but I always thought their song Knocking Down Guardrails, which is on the 30 Seconds Over DC compilation, is one of the greatest songs ever. It's a great song.
I love the pics that Jeff had in MRR. What do you think about MRR being gone now? Maximum Rock and Roll is gone now. The Punk Bible, MRR, is gone.
Well, it was a hell of a run. I mean, Tim Yohannan was, he was a true charismatic guy, really interesting, very funny, pretty maddening at times. I loved him, but he was also drove me crazy. And he really was iconic, and he had his own, he just did things his way. When he died, I sort of thought that would be the end of the fanzine. But as it turned out, other people really picked it up and ran with it for years and years. And I think it's great. And I think that you refer to it as a punk Bible. I would say for me, Flipside was a more important fanzine. For me, that doesn't mean it was more important for everybody, but for me, Flipside was the best fanzine. But Maximum played a really central role in this sort of dialogue. I mean, obviously, this is at a time where people's communications were limited to either letter writing or phone calls. So there was Maximum was the fanzine that really embraced the national and international communities. Flipside, I think there was a brief period of time where they toyed with the idea that they would be sort of a national zine, but I think that Al and Hud, who ran Flipside, thought we just want to do an LA zine. Tim and Jeff Bale and Ruth Schwartz and Biafra early on, I think they really felt like, let's make this a national fanzine. So in a way, the general conversation could be found in the letter section. If you looked in the letter section, you'd see the letter from, a grousing letter from somebody in New York or Florida or whatever, and people were taking shots at each other. So I think that it certainly had a really important role in the scene. In later years, it didn't have much to do with me. I didn't refer to it very often because I think that Johannan especially had a really orthodox view of what punk was, whereas for me, punk is ever evolving, ever changing. So at some point, he deigned us Fugazi, that is, not punk, which is fine. But it just meant that we were punks, but not in his eyes. But we were still, as I said, still great friends right until his death. I love the guy.
Winding up here with Ian MacKaye. Ian, I was wondering, when you were over in the UK with Black Flag, what type of cheese did they feed you?
That's an excellent question, and I don't know the answer to that question. It was a block of cheese, as I recall, like a small hunk of some kind of cheese. At that point, hunger was such a prevailing force. It didn't really matter what kind of cheese it was. I mean, we were starving. We had no food and very little money. I had some British pounds hidden in my shoe just in case I had to, I was really desperate because they had already taken 50 pounds off of me to buy groceries and never paid me back for that. So I had to hide some money in my shoe because everybody was so desperate for food. But they were giving us each day. When I say they, by the way, I really mean Greg Ginn and Chuck Dukowski, who were sort of the de facto leaders of Black Flag at the time. And we were each person in the party. It was Greg and Chuck, Des Cadine on guitar, Henry Rollins on vocals, Robo on drums. Mugger was a roadie, and Spot the sound man, and me. So there was 8 of us. And each day we each received 2 rolls of bread, like bread rolls, a hunk of cheese, and an apple. That was what we got each day to eat. And then after that you had to fend for yourself.
Ian, what other stuff did you find? Did I actually ask you to look for? Was there anything in the vaults of Discord? Just winding up with Ian MacKaye, I asked Ian if he had some certain items, and you kindly, thank you, Ian, for your time. Was it hard to find these items? It's not that hard to find. It's just you have to have the time, right?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't find more stuff on your list necessarily, but I just for instance, I'll pull out, here's a stack of things. So for instance, here's that Lake Lawn ad. This is a Fugazi. This is a Scandinavian tour laminate. Here's something from, this is, I think, 89. This is a benefit we did for a women's shelter in Northampton, Massachusetts. Let's see what else we have here. A ticket for a show at the State Theater. I mean, I have, this is a luggage tag. Fugazi luggage tag, people.
Did it work? Did the luggage tag work?
Well, nothing ever got stolen, so we don't know. I assume it did. I mean, I have mountains of this sort of stuff. Let's see what's in this other. In this one, I have. Springer from SSD Control, his high school, a photocopy of his high school yearbook picture.
Now, where was that stored all these years?
Just in an envelope. I don't know. This is a receipt from Yesterday and Today Records. And you can see I bought an advert single and a lurker single. This date on here is March 13th, 1979. I bought an advert single for 95 cents, a lurker single for 95 cents, and I bought 2 poly bags, and he charged me 10 cents. My total bill was $2.10.
A good investment.
Yeah. And here's another one from the same thing. This is an Ian Dury single, Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick, and the Eater single, probably Jeep, I forgot which record it would be, and then 2 sleeves. This was $4.83. This is from the summer of '79.
You were also working there at that time, were you?
Not yet. I didn't work there till '83. This is a ticket from the Georgetown movie theater. This is the movie theater that Henry and I and a bunch of us all worked at this movie theater for years. 1351 Wisconsin Avenue, 202-333. Val is the phone number. Here is a ticket from the DOA show, the Marble Bar, in 1981. Marble Bar was in Baltimore, Maryland.
Were you at that gig then?
Of course, because DOA were the greatest of all bands.
And Ian, what exactly are we doing right now? What are you showing to people in case they're just joining us right now? What are you? This is from the Discord archives or your personal archives?
No, this is it's all the same thing. It's just basically in my collection. I have the envelopes, and in envelopes I have tons of little papers, and I just haven't sorted these things out. So I just grabbed a whole envelope to show you some of the things that you might.
Wife, you share a birthday with.
Yeah, this FDR, this is Truman, this is Kennedy. This looks like Eisenhower, I think. I think this one is
Lyndon Johnson.
Lyndon Johnson. Didn't he got impeached? No. Yeah.
He succeeded Kennedy.
Succeeded Kennedy. He was after Kennedy, right?
Yes, exactly. But you love history, and you also share a birthday with his wife, with Eleanor's wife?
Eleanor, yeah, I do. Her birthday is on October 11th.
And that is a vinyl record for you, a gift for you, Cardi B.
Well, yeah,
an actual vinyl record.
Where am I gonna play it?
You're gonna buy a turntable.
Well, how you know I could afford one?
They're at thrift stores, very cheap.
Well, thank you. I would, because I like listening to these type of things.
Cardi B, quote, "I'm like the strip club
Mariah Carey.
And I have a gift for you from the #1 strip club in Vancouver, the Penthouse. It's the history of the Penthouse nightclub in Vancouver.
Yeah.
And it's personally addressed to you. If you could open #1, 2.
Yeah, when I was 20, I auditioned to Penthouse in New York City. I think it's in 40-something Street, like in 11th Ave. But they told me to come back in a couple of months when I turned 21, because, you got to be 21 and older.
This Penthouse nightclub is amazing. If you can see, if you can open up #2, on #2 there, it has a picture of Louis Armstrong. He hung out at the strip club, the Penthouse.
Jesus Christ.
And #3, Sammy Davis Jr. hung out at the Penthouse.
I mean, men just love half-naked women or butt-naked women.
Liquor Lust and the Law, the history of the #1 strip bar in Vancouver, the Penthouse.
I should read it.
And actually, I was going to ask you, that's a gift for you. I was going to ask you about these records. What can you say about stripping, like music to strip by? What do you think about these records, Cardi B?
I mean, it really depends on the club that you work in. I actually used to enjoy dancing to house music. But, I went to the hood clubs, and then it's just like hip hop. It just really depends.
And we also have how to strip for your husband.
Oh, I don't need this. I know how to.
Because you are Cardi?
Look at my ring. What does that tell you?
Amazing. Cardi B.
It tells you I don't need this right here.
But I have another gift for you from 1962, another vinyl record, David Rose, Music of the Stripper. That is for you, Cardi B.
Music of the Stripper.
That is for you, a gift for you.
When did stripping like started? Do you know?
I think at the dawn of time.
The dawn of time, right?
There always has been strippers, but that is for you from 1962.
1962.
I was curious, Cardi B, what can you say about these female rappers right here? Trina, the baddest
Bitch.
What can you say about Trina?
I could say, get involved with a nigga, slap on a nigga, get all the money that I rob a nigga, cause I'm a nasty bitch. I leave a nigga dead broke, snatch his bag and give a brand new coat. I'm the jazzy type, and I only let you eat it if you ask me, right? My bitch mad tight.
Amazing, Cardi B. Mm-hmm. And underneath it, we also have from Los Angeles, Hose with Attitude. What do you think about that type of band?
I never really heard about them, but I already like them. Hose with Attitude. See, I gotta listen to them. Maybe I could get inspiration from them, because there's the type of people that I like.
And it just
not afraid to be themselves.
There also is Bitches with Problems.
Well, goddamn. Shit.
Another band to investigate.
Yes, I gotta go back in time. You know what I'm saying? I'm like a 90s baby. So when I started understanding like hip hop, what they were saying, I was like around, 8, 7, 6. Like I was saying these type of things, but I don't know what was I saying. And my mom, she grew up like listening to like Aerosmith, Madonna, Pet Shop Boys. That's the type of thing we used to listen in our house. She's like, she came to this country and like she lived upstate New York with like the Caucasians.
And you are Cardi
B.
Cardi B, and I have another gift.
How much money you spend on all these gifts for me? You are over gifting me. Like I feel like I owe you something now.
Just being Cardi B.